and welcome back to another episode on Born to Talk with Callanthea. So, today's episode is, of course, about setting boundaries in your personal life. And I've specifically put personal life because I do think that I might do another one on working life, right? And that's slightly different, even though it's obviously the same sort of concept. But really wanting to kind of explore this idea because this podcast for me is all about self improvement, right? How can we actually live a healthier life, a better life, a more fulfilled life, more rewarding life? And in order to kind of get there and achieve that, we need to be open to new ideas and we need to really have good self awareness and be able to reflect. And what better way to reflect than to recognize, do we actually have boundaries? And if we don't, how is it making us feel, right? Do we actually need to get them in place? So, I'm going to kind of go through why we should really set boundaries, okay, and also what obstacles we might face, and just kind of my thoughts on that, really, and maybe how to kind of respond to people. I'm also wanting to kind of talk about some ways that we can actually set boundaries, some common examples of things that people don't really have boundaries in, but maybe they want to, maybe they should, and just to essentially have a better, happier life. So, that being said, then, what are the benefits of setting boundaries? Because we know that people do set them, so there has to be some benefits. And for me, there's two really strong benefits. Okay, the first one, which I really appreciate, is knowing that I actually respect myself. If I listen to my intuition, if I feel like I'm uncomfortable in a certain situation or I need to say no, right? Setting that boundary is basically me being on my own side, right? Me being my own best friend. And if we can all set boundaries and have that self respect, we're going to feel better within. But also, we do show others how to treat us as well. So, really, really important benefit there, self respect. Now, the second one, again, another wonderful, important benefit is actually self care. If you are listening to yourself and you know that you need a boundary in place, and then you go and put that boundary in place, if you are getting used to doing that, okay, you are going to reap the benefits of that in your well being. It might be that you're just too tired to do something, right? And being able to say no means that you get the rest and relaxation that you need. So it is an act of self care as well as showing self respect. And that sounds really wonderful, right? To the point where we probably all think, right, I'm going to set all these boundaries in place because I want to feel like I respect myself. I want to know that I'm looking after myself. But we all know that we face some difficulties and some obstacles when we do set boundaries sometimes. And something that I was thinking about is that when we do set boundaries, if we have to say no to someone, for example, we can often be riddled with guilt. Because it might be that it's not that we don't want to do that thing with someone or we don't want to help them out, but we just know that it's not the right time for us, right? And we might feel guilty because we do care. And I think that that's a normal human emotion. I've experienced that a lot as well. And you don't want to let people down, and that is understandable. But at the end of the day, okay, at the end of the day, if you know that you need to do this to show self respect or to just look after yourself, then that needs to really override guilt. Okay, guilt can be released and you can forgive yourself for that. Also, if other people aren't willing to forgive you, then that's more of a reflection on them than it is you. Okay, so obviously it is an obstacle, but I think it's one that can absolutely be overcome, especially if you have understanding people in your life. And another obstacle that we all will face at some point is that we worry about what other people are thinking about us, right? Are they judging us? Are they misunderstanding us in some way? And that can be really kind of crippling, right? That fear can rise and you start overthinking and you think, well, maybe it's just not worth it. If I'm going to worry about what they're thinking, I'll just do what they want. But essentially, people like that are toxic, right? If they are actually judging you, again, it's a reflection on them. So please don't let that kind of stop you from setting a boundary. Yes, it's normal to worry what others think sometimes. It is, right? We all want to be accepted. But really ask yourself, If people are willing to judge you for looking after yourself, do they actually care about you? And are they worth it? Because when I ask that question, I think, well, if people are going to judge me when they don't even know the situation, they don't care to know the situation, they're just wanting to take what they can take, then again, it's a reflection on them and it just shows that they aren't very nice people and I don't want to be around them, right? So, of course, it is normal to overthink and worry about what people think, of course, but we really need to sort of decide what is more important, weighing up whether we need to set a boundary or letting guilt or overthinking and worrying about what other people think about us affect us and control our lives. Right? I think we all can say that we all want to have control in our own lives. And if we're not really hurting other people, then we should be able to do what we want to do. We should have autonomy over our own bodies, our own lives. And I think when you really put that argument to anyone, most people will understand that that makes sense. But it doesn't stop people from gossiping behind your back or judging you or making you feel guilty and making you feel bad. But again, it is really a reflection on them. So I would say that the benefits, right, of setting boundaries, showing that self-respect, if you've got self-respect, you're going to like yourself more. And also having that self-care, if you're looking after yourself, you're going to have more to give others as well. I think that those benefits really outweigh the kind of worry about other people's judgments or that guilt that you feel. And I think that we can really work through those kind of obstacles. And the more that you do it, you'll probably find that actually people do start to respond and they learn, they begin to understand that this is what you do, this is what you're like. And like I said, the right people in your life, okay, they will not judge you for it. So, I'm going to talk about some ways that we can actually set boundaries, right? Some different moments and events that happen in our lives that we can probably all relate to. And maybe we can all learn how to set some more boundaries in these areas, right? These common areas in our lives. So, the first one, classic one, right? Being able to say no to people. If you cannot say no to people and you're a yes man, yes miss, right? Then you are not in control of your life. People will take advantage of you, whether they are doing it consciously or unconsciously, it doesn't matter. You will get taken advantage of, okay? And you will soon start to realize that actually your energy levels are probably depleted. You don't have time for what you really want to do because you can't say no. So there's a lot of negatives of not setting boundaries, right? So that one is a really important one. And I've got some kind of examples here. So some people, okay, might expect you to drive them around everywhere, right? My brother does this sometimes. He doesn't drive, he doesn't have a car. So sometimes he will ask me to take him here, take him there. And I always want to be helpful and I will try my best to take him, right? But sometimes I'm like, you know what? I don't really want to do that because I'm going to have to do more trips here and I'm going there anyway. So if you want to do that, you just have to make your own way there. So it's like that's me setting a boundary. It's not that I would never want to drive someone somewhere, but it is about making sure that you can say no to people. And maybe it's easier to say no to some family members sometimes, right? If you're that close with them or that comfortable with them. Maybe it's harder for some families, right? Maybe you feel like you can't say no to your family. But I really do think that this is an area where, we can all focus on and we can all work on. Maybe you're not bothered. Maybe you're happy to drive people around and be a taxi person, right? Or maybe you think, you know what? I'm sick of being a taxi. If my kid tells me to drive somewhere, I'm not going to take them. I'm going to let them get the bus and, let it be character building and life experience, right? You could technically do that. So don't feel like you can't. But another common example, looking after maybe someone's kids or pets, right? Dogs specifically. I've had to do this a few times, not so much kids because I definitely put a boundary in place with that one. I don't have kids myself, so I would not feel comfortable looking after young children, right? If they were teenagers, maybe, but young children, absolutely not, especially when they're not potty trained. I don't want anything to do with that unless I have my own kids. So, but you might find that actually this is something that happens with you. Okay, maybe you are the babysitter and you think, oh, I'm tired of babysitting all the time. Again, you can say no. It is the parent's job to look after the kids, right? I'm completely on board with that. I like helping people out. If I was confident with looking after kids, I probably would help, some of my family members out with looking after their kids occasionally, but it would be on my terms and not theirs. And that's because I wouldn't want to kind of feel like I've set the precedent that, oh, they can just, come to me every week now, and I'll always say yes. I feel like we can find it hard to get out of a hole that we have dug for ourselves when that happens. So get your boundaries in place as soon as possible, right? Say, look, I'm more than happy to help, but it will be on my terms. If I want to say no, I'm going to say no. And then they know, okay, exactly where you stand. Another example is obviously looking after people's pets. Okay, same thing really. And I've done this a few times. Me and my partner do look after his mum's dog sometimes, and we love the dog. She's brilliant, but she's quite needy, and sometimes we just don't want to have that responsibility of looking after someone else's dog, especially if it's over like a long period. So if they go on a holiday and they want someone to look after the dog for a week or 2 weeks, we have done that before, but it can be really kind of draining. And also, sometimes what happens is when you look after other people's pets, you're expected to go to their home to look after the pet. And I quite like being in my own home, my own energy, rather than being in someone else's home. I did actually look after someone's cats and chickens once. I don't even know how I did it because, oh my God, chickens, man, they're just absolutely mental, really mental. There was like 6 of them, and I didn't even want to touch them. And I had to get like a towel and put it over the wings to try and get them back in because they were so stubborn. Oh, yeah, I don't know how I did it, but I was able to look after chickens. So I can put that on my resume, obviously. But I could have said no, but I think at the time I was like quite happy to do that. But again, it's on my terms. So I do think that, if we can have boundaries, we can absolutely say no. It doesn't mean to say we have to say no all the time, but it certainly doesn't mean to say we have to say yes all the time as well. Another boundary that we can actually learn to set in place is just making sure that people are treating us right and treating us with respect. I think there's too many people out there that just aren't assertive enough, maybe not confident enough, or they're just worried about the consequences of setting boundaries and respecting themselves. But if you have to worry about a negative consequence of you setting boundaries and looking after yourself, then that person is clearly not benefiting your life. They're not supportive. So it is important, to say to people, you look, I don't appreciate this. I don't want you to speak to me like this, or never use that word around me because, I'm not going to get on board with that. You can have boundaries. And sometimes, we're more than reasonable in setting those. And other times we might have to kind of say, okay, look, lots of people talk about this sort of stuff. If I don't like it, maybe I can't tell them to shut up, but what I can do is just walk away from them, right? And say, look, I'm not going to be part of this conversation. It happens sometimes, like I'm vegan, and I will do an episode on veganism at some point. And sometimes when people really get involved in talking about meat and how much they love it, and they know that I'm vegan, and I'll see them looking at me and I think they're just wanting a response. And I've learned just to kind of be quiet on it, but I will not engage and I won't be laughing and smiling about what they're saying. And sometimes I've had to walk away from those situations, right? Because I can't expect that if they're not vegan, I can't expect them to not talk about meat, right? When most of the world eats meat. So, that's something that, yes, I can obviously show my self respect by just walking away. And if anyone said, oh, that was rude, I'd say absolutely not, because I'm not here to sit and listen to you talk about that. End of. Right. So I have the confidence to be able to do that and say that. Just like if, someone was swearing at you, like I don't like being swore at. I don't mind people swearing. I swear quite a lot actually, but I don't like being swore at, or I don't like men raising their voices at me. Like that really upsets me and disturbs me. And that's like something that I will always kind of put in place. Like that's not going to happen. So we will all have our own sort of different triggers that we think just kind of go over that threshold where we're like, look, it's not about me changing, it's about them. That is not acceptable. And you have a right to say, I am not going to put up with this. Right. And it can be quite hard to talk to people about this, because we do worry a little bit sometimes how they're going to react. But again, if they are supportive, then they will want to listen, they will want to help you out, and they will want to avoid saying those things to make sure they are respecting you. So that's another one that you can focus on, okay? Letting someone know a boundary of what you don't want them to do, okay, or say to you. We're more than in our rights to kind of have those boundaries. But at the same time, we can't expect people to actually adhere to them. So it might be that, if they don't adhere to them, you have to just walk away from that person. But that's something that you need to decide whether it's worth doing or not. And another thing that we can kind of bring into setting boundaries into our lives are when our energies are taken up with lots of stuff that's happening, right? It might be social media, right? There's a lot happening on social media and you feel like you've got to be constantly proactive because other people expect you to be. But don't do things just because other people are expecting you to be proactive. We need to manage our time and our energy. Again, it's all about self-care. It might be that you decide you don't want to be on social media and you're not going to be talking to your friends on a certain platform for a few weeks, right? Maybe you want to give yourself a break. And again, that's about you setting boundaries and what's going to be right for you and beneficial for you. So, this is a really important one. And just recently, I removed myself from a WhatsApp chat. And it wasn't because I didn't like the people in the WhatsApp chat, it's just they were constantly talking. And I was more of an outsider anyway, it was someone else's family. So I just thought, I'm just going to leave this chat. They're not my family and they are constantly talking on it. So that's just something for me. I don't want to feel like I've got to keep looking at all the messages, make sure I'm responding. It's just too much effort. And we've only got so much time in a day to kind of do what is valuable to us. It can be difficult, can be awkward sometimes. Again, those obstacles will come up. Are people going to judge me? Do I feel guilty for leaving? Well, I don't feel guilty. I might get judged, but honestly, it doesn't matter. I do not care because I'm putting myself first. And again, the right people would understand that. It's not always that straightforward. It's not always that easy, but it's still important, okay? And maybe this is just me, but I quite like doing something that's a bit uncomfortable because we are often quite conflicted in what we think about something and how we feel about something. Like we might logically think, I don't want to do this, I want to say no. But we feel like, oh, but I'm going to let them down. And we feel these overwhelming emotions sometimes. But at the end of the day, it's good to kind of be in that uncomfortable position and plow through it anyway, right? Decide to not give in to those kind of seeming obstacles that come up, those feelings that come up and worries about what others are thinking, and just to do it because it is the right thing to do. And eventually it will settle down, everything will be okay. So please have confidence in doing that, okay? So I'm going to challenge you to really look at your life, okay, and just think, where can you actually start to set some boundaries in your personal life? Do you think you say yes too much and you need to start saying no? Do you want to remove yourself from, society's expectations and social platforms and social media? Do you want to kind of let someone know that the way that they're treating you is not okay? You need to set boundaries, right? Have a real think about that because I can guarantee there's probably at least one area where you think, you know what, maybe I could actually set a boundary here. And the more that you do set these boundaries and you communicate that with others, you'll gain more confidence. And like I said, you're looking after your self respect and your self care. So I'm just going to give you a little key takeaway now. And I came across a quote, no idea who it's written by, but I thought it summed setting boundaries up pretty well. And it said that the only people who get upset about you setting boundaries are the ones who are benefiting from you having none. And that to me just seems to sum up all of this, right? So please be conscious of setting boundaries, look after yourself, and remember, stay true to you, and hopefully, I'll see you soon.